Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Adobe Live. Before we start, we would, of course, like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we live, create, and learn on today. Paying respects, of course, to elders past, present, and emerging. And as you can see, we have a special guest today, and that is our wonderful, usually host, but now guest, Flyn Tracy. How are you doing, Flynn?
I'm good. It's very weird to not do the intro on camera like that. It's been many years of doing that. So it's very strange to be sitting in the other seat, in the same seat. So let's find out what happens.
It is. Yeah. I think it's very surreal for myself, but especially for any of our regulars tuning in, I should say, as well. But in case we have some new people watching, do you mind introducing yourself, doing a proper full introduction?
Okay, cool. So my name is Flynn, and I'm usually the host of Adobe Live. But Johanna is taking my job today, and I'll be in the driver's seat. So we're going to be talking about branding and identity. So I guess just a little bit of history. For the last 5 years, I've been working with Adobe mostly on all sorts of projects like events and Adobe Live and things like that. But I started in graphic design. So my love is graphic design. Used to work for a design school called Tractor Design School and do a bit of teaching there and managing the industry program. So the idea was we would get students or graduates to work in studios and agencies, which was really, really super cool. But that was a whole lifetime ago now. And during that time, created Australian Design Radio so we could have an excuse to talk to all of our heroes and friends.
Absolutely.
So, and that's still kicking on. So Matt Leach is doing that. I've been a bit too busy to continue on with that. So that is now in the past for me. But that still kicks on. So if you want to hear me talk again, there's like 130 episodes or something with my dumb voice asking dumb questions to smart people. So, that's kind of a little bit of my history. I'm more of a generalist, I would say, on the tools. We kind of use everything at Adobe from, XD. I was using Fresco last night for some of my sketches. Illustrator's probably closest to my jam. Obviously, we have amazing guests on that show all these like advanced tools and like processes and things like that. And there's a lot of watching, but not a lot of doing in a lot of the cases.
Now's your chance.
Yeah, so now's the chance. So here we are, and we're here today.
We're here today, and thankfully also working in Illustrator. So lucky that is
by design.
The program of choice. But speaking of, we also have a brief.
Yeah.
Miraculously, do you wanna take us through the brief?
Let's do it. Let's get stuck into it. Hey, Flynn, make that transition happen. Okay. I might get something slightly wrong here because there's about 5 screens in front of me, and but I'm working from my MacBook today. So, but in preparation for today, we actually have a logo to work from, a brief to work from. Sorry. So we're going to be creating a skateboarding logo or kind of brand identity for 8 to 13-year-olds, and the skateboard brand is called Talon. The child is also called Talon. The logo must be age appropriate, but have a sense of skate culture. And this is something that's actually going to exist. So it's not going to be something for Instagram or like just a website. So we need to, that's going to come in handy in a little bit. But our applications are going to be everything from t-shirts to stickers, maybe a skateboard. So we need to keep that sort of thing in mind, particularly with like the color profiles and things like that. Which is why it's great to work in Illustrator, because we can scale everything up and down, and create everything vector based, and create some patterns and things like that that could be applied to like any scale. So We'll play around with some of those things. And then just a very short kind of insight is that the client has interest in birds, skateboarding, and surfing.
Very nice. And I think for some added insight, we talked just before the stream started about what's the reason that this brief came to be, and you had a very nice story about Christmas presents and Secret Santa. Do we have time to cover that as well before we get going?
Yeah, we can jump into that. So years ago, our family was getting a little bit big and like buying each other like $20 plastic presents and stuff like that. It was always a bit of a hassle. So we went down the Secret Santa route. But rather than just do Secret Santa and we buy one thing for one person, we decided to, we call it make. So we do make Christmas. So you have to make the thing, which has been a lot of fun, and there's been a lot of failed experiments. But basically you pull the name out of the hat at Christmas, and then you know who you're going to be making for the next year. So you often have the whole year to think about it or do it. Obviously things are always done at the last minute in December, but whatever. I'm getting started early this year. But it's quite a fun thing to do. I get in a lot of trouble because I have a design background if I do too many design things, but I'd made something physical last year. So we're going to go down the design route because that's the easiest way to do things.
Gotta work with your strengths.
Yeah. So that's where this brief has come from. Talon is a real person. It's actually a real child. So rather than giving the actual age, a bit of an age range for our brief, so we can kind of expand on it a little bit. But I also wanted to chat just about like giving yourself briefs and chat about this wonderful website, because some of you out there might be wanting to build your portfolio out. And you know, it can be quite hard like to think of your own kind of brief, and something that can be really useful is getting out of your comfort zone with creating briefs or creating work for your portfolio, if you want to, you know, appeal to a wide audience. If you have a particular style, it's totally fine. A particular industry you want to go to, that's totally fine. But for most like students and graduates and things like that, it's great to have like a wide berth of portfolio. So this can be really great to check out. It's called goodbrief.io, and you can give yourself a brief. Basically, you generate one. So let's have a little go now. Let's do a logo, and then you can choose an industry. So let's do travel.
Oh yes, we all need and want more travel.
And so it'll spit out like a randomly kind of generated brief, which is super cool. So company name, company description, job description, you know, just to give you a bit of some guidelines. It's always good to have guidelines, so you're not like sitting there with a blank piece of paper thinking, what can I create today? It even gives you a little bit of a deadline. And if you don't like it, you can just generate it again. But it's a good little resource to check out. So anybody out there that's interested in that sort of thing.
Yeah, fantastic. And I've being the host and mod today, very exciting, I've popped a link in the chat to both Australian Design Radio and the Good Brief website as well. And of course also the Acknowledgement of Country link if anyone wants to find out more about that as well. Great.
Okay, well there you go. So let's get stuck into this, like where to start with a brief. So how about some research? So
yes,
this is like a snapshot. I did a lot more research than what I've put into this, but this is kind of a pretty good snapshot of what I discovered. My first thing, what's up, Jeremy in chat? My first, no pressure. I'm glad I'm not using Photoshop with Jeremy in chat. So, yeah, so there are a pretty wide myriad of examples here. It's super grungy. One thing that really stuck out to me is like how like age inappropriate a lot of this stuff would be if we were trying to create something exactly like this. Like it's a lot of skulls, a lot of sharp pointy bits. You can see some blood and fire. I don't know. Yeah, there's a little bit of drug influence probably coming into some of this stuff as well.
I can't have that.
Can't have that. So you've got to remember who we're creating this for, right? Like it's a young kid. But at the same time, if you come at it from an advertising kind of perspective or know much about kids, like young kids are always going to emulate the people that are a little bit older than them. So like if you remember, if you watch an ad that is aimed at a certain target demographic, they'll always have older kids. So, that's why it's always a bit weird if you see, these like almost adults running around playing with super soakers. It's because they're aiming for like the 14, 15-year-olds, but they'll get 17-year-old kids kind of doing it so it seems cool.
What are you saying? So didn't you run around with super soakers at that age as well?
All the time.
Like...
I do it in my 30s. It's totally cool. I'm not saying it's not cool, but that's a typical kind of advertising thing. And the same sort of thought process. It's a bit of an ad trick, yeah. And the same sort of thought process is here. Like, we don't want it to make it too kid-like. We're not going to put Bluey on the skateboard or anything like that. Looks like you're drinking wine.
Very fancy glass. It's a beer glass, but that's a topic for another stream, I think, doing beer branding.
Let's do that instead. Let's scrap this.
Yep. Start again, guys. Roll the tape.
Shut it down. So we want it to be, we want it to kind of appeal and look like a real kind of skate brand without, saying slime balls or something like that, which you can see in there somewhere. Which kind of led me a little bit further down surfing, which seems to be a little bit more colorful, bit happier. Yeah, it's not skateboarding, but it's okay to like look for inspiration outside of the industry you're going for. It's not a giant leap to jump into surfing from skateboarding anyway, and the kid likes to surf too. So, but much more colorful, I even like the skateboard here, which kind of led me down a particular track, which we'll get to in a little bit. Typographic, bold colors, going to the beach is fun, and you go when it's sunny, so you can see why that would happen. But pulling out a couple of these ones that I quite liked, like the Santa Cruz is like a classic, and we will need a typographic approach to this, and I got the Spitfire there to kind of compare the two. Like Spitfire is well known, so that's the one just below the flame, I guess. But without saying Spitfire like that, we don't know what that is. So we're gonna need a real typographic approach to this to actually say Talon. So Santa Cruz is probably the closer to what we're after. I really like the Thrasher thing because it has these little cuts. Yeah, it's like super famous, but like it's also very literal. So it's got these like cuts in it as well, which I quite like because I was thinking, oh, Talon cuts. Okay, cool. Maybe there's like a little Talon cutting in. And then we're looking at apparel. Like, how do these things actually look on shirts and things like that? Like down the bottom, that jumper has a big Thrasher logo on the chest. We could do something like that. That's pretty easy, just slapping a logo on it, but we might want to consider having a smaller version of the logo and then maybe something more illustrative on the back. So it's just good to kind of think about that sort of stuff, that, what's the small version of your identity, and then like how creative can you expand it out rather than just having a real small version and a really big version. So.
And I think that to jump ahead, probably it speaks to when you're getting into the deliverables and the final product, thinking, okay, here's a simplified version of the logo and here's an expanded version of the logo, because there's different applications of the branding. So you could have social, you could have print and product. So I think thinking about it early, where it's going to live and sort of at what size it's going to live is really important, part of the early research as well.
Yeah, it's like super important. If you can get that information at the beginning, like where it's going to go and where it's going to be seen, it's great. Jeremy's saying the Etnies logo throws me back. I know, everybody had a pair of Etnies our age growing up. All right, here's some Hootie Boys. So
Hootie Boys!
I had to do an extra bit of research, and the Hoot Squad here helped me out. So I had to Google what was a Talon, and so is it like, how is a Talon different to a claw? And so I checked it out. Apparently, a Talon is something that birds of prey have. So that sounds quite violent, but it's good for us to know. So, like, for example, chickens have claws, whereas like a hawk or an owl, because they're a bird of prey, have talons, because they actually grab their lunch with their sharp talons. And so I thought that was the more you know. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And I was kind of leaning to it. I was like, oh, cool, we could have this like hawk coming down and stuff. But of course, we're trying to keep in mind that, we don't want to be too violent with this. And I thought owls were a nice kind of midway point because they're so sweet. And then, of course, super literal. I think it's always really useful to go down the super literal route because you might find something special there. It's usually the most obvious direction. to go in, but sometimes you can find a little bit of magic going super straight down the middle with things and then expand from it. And like, okay, let's have a look at some of Flynn's terrible sketches. So just in fresco, this is actually just last night, in bed, sitting around and just kind of just getting some really bad ideas out. So this would usually just be for me, but I'll share my terrible sketches with you all, just so that you know that it's okay to draw terribly.
I think you're being too hard on yourself, Flynn. Like, because really at the sketch stage and what you were saying with, getting all the ideas out so you can look at a lot of stuff and then sort out what is good and what is bad. You find out more about the process, and you really exploring all possibilities is really important in the creative process. So don't be so hard on yourself, Flynn. That's
fine. It's fine. I just hate how I sketch. But yeah, if it's for you, it doesn't matter. Like, you really don't want to spend too long doing stuff like this. It's just about frequency. And I probably have about 10 pages of this stuff, but I've just selected the ones that I think are appropriate because I don't want you guys to have to go through everything. But there's a couple of ideas here that have come through. And something that I will do is jump between like writing word association and then back to sketching. And I find it really useful because I might go, okay, skateboard, right? Super literal, trucks, ramps, punk. And I just keep writing until I kind of more or less run out of steam with that. And then jump back in and see were there any ideas in there, like could we do something with the trucks? Could we do something with the skateboard? Ramps, or, blah, blah, blah. So that's always super useful. And then once I kind of feel like I've exhausted that list, I'll jump back in and just start writing another list. And again, I wrote like quite a lot of these bits of stuff, but these are kind of appropriate to where I think we're going to head. And then kind of came down here and pulled in this page because you can see the thought process of this little owl thing that I think is going to be one of the territories we go down. Thinking about, a literal, like really just basic drawing of a skateboard. And I was like, that kind of looks like an angry face. It almost looks like the Bad Boy logo. I don't know if you know that, but...
I do, yes. I'm not that young.
I know, but I don't know. But then you can see owl. I've written owl, like maybe...
Owl question mark?
Owl question mark. So maybe there's like something where it's kind of like a little bit of an abstract skateboard kind of over the top of an owl, which kind of is really nice thematically. We've got like the owl is related to the Talon. We've got this creature because this kid is interested in birds and stuff like that. I don't know if he's interested in birds because his name's Talon and it's just happened. Like naming your kid Jeeves and they become a butler, and then also maybe we can like wedge in a bit of an abstract version of a skateboard. So, I'm kind of excited about that direction. So here we go. So I've just pulled out this kind of like super literal kind of skateboard version. This is more of a typographic approach, which we'll see if we get to today, but I really kind of just like the idea of the star in the middle of the A. It doesn't really relate to the brief too much, but if you're looking at a lot of the skateboard brands and things like that, a lot of it's about application anyway. So maybe we could use this logo, but then get really kind of creative from it. And here's the beginning of our little owl. As you can tell,
very exciting stuff.
My favorite. All right. So check that out. So we're going to move on to kind of the next step now, which is we're going to check out some fonts and things like that. So let me know if you have any questions or if you want me to chat about anything else while we're doing that.
Yeah. Before you do, just 2 questions that come to mind. First, where do you in general get your research? I know this brief is sort of very sort of simple and clear cut. Not to say that simple briefs don't require equal amounts of research, but where do you get your research? And in sort of getting into the research phase and the sketching phase, how long does that generally take? How many do you have a set amount of sketches that you do before you move on? I know that was 2 questions at once.
No, that's okay.
Pick your favorite.
That's okay. I can do that. So in terms of research, usually it's just Google. Like I don't keep a Pinterest page or anything like that. Usually I'll just create a local file on my desktop and just start dragging stuff in. But I don't do it in like a segmented kind of way where I go, okay, here's an hour for research, here's an hour for sketching, and here's this. Like I really do kind of all of it at once, and I'll often have like 50 tabs open. I'm drawing, and I'll be like, oh, what was that thing? I found something before, and and kind of one thing tends to lead to another, and so it's a bit of a chaotic kind of approach to it, but it works for me. In terms of time, it's just how much time you have for it, how important is the project to you. Time is the most valuable resource we have, and there's not a lot of it at the moment. So this was all probably like an hour or two, I would say, kind of getting to this stage. And then your second question was...
Oh, it was how long you spend on sketches.
How long?
So,
okay, cool.
Yeah, you answered it. Did it. 10 out of 10.
We're doing it.
And speaking of questions, of course, if anyone else in chat, whether you're tuning in on Behance or on YouTube, hop on over to Behance and feel free to post your questions in the chat, and we'll get to them all or as many as we can this stream.
Yeah, ask me about owls. So I'm just over at Adobe Fonts. I want to check out a couple of, want to get like a good cross section of fonts just at the very beginning. To play around with our logo. We might end up changing them. We might end up like altering the font itself. But I find this is like a really useful way to kind of kickstart your designs, because it starts looking much more designy, much faster. Designy is a word. And what I like to do, because we already know what the brand is and everything, you can put into the sample text what you would like to see. It's just a much faster way to do it. And you can even do it in caps. So you can actually start seeing, even in caps, which is really cool. We definitely want a clean font to play around with. Because the T, the L, and the N, there's not a lot of nuance between the fonts. So really, I'm looking at the A's and the O's. And you might remember one of the ideas that we thought we might like was the star in the middle of the A. So kind of keeping that in the back of my head as I'm looking through some of these. I'm also looking for something that has a wide font library. So let me find one that's small. So this one has one font. So that's not good for us. We don't want to, this isn't a real client, this is for me, but I don't want to give myself as a designer just one option, even if it's really great. So this might be something that you might use for a poster or something like that, but you should never use this for a brand, because you're going to want as wide a library as possible so that, the designer or the client can, have more flexibility in how they use the font that you've supplied them. I mean, Futura, we could just do Futura,
Futura is always a solid pick.
which always solid. I think this one's looking pretty cool. Halcom. So this is if you have a Creative Cloud account. I'm really kind of looking at these bold ones because we're more than likely going to be using, a bold or a book kind of font here. And we're going to cheat again and literally just put this in and make Adobe Fonts do the work for us. I don't know. Work smarter, not harder, everyone. Yeah. And if you want to check this out, I also posted a link to Adobe Fonts in the chat. Yeah. Super useful resource. This is a lot faster than we have to use to do it back in the day. So you can individually activate fonts, or you can just activate them all up here. So I'm just going to do that. And if the streaming gods are good to us, it'll just appear as an option. I'm going to give it a second. In Illustrator. But while we're doing that, we're going to find another one. And I actually had something in mind that I've used before. And I'm cheating a little bit here, and I'm going against my rules. This only has 2 fonts in it. But this is mostly just because I only really want to use it for the main part of TALON. And we would still have another font potentially with like skateboarding or something like that, like in addition. So as you can see, I've already activated that because I got a little bit excited about it. I just think it's kind of cool that it has kind of these cuts in that. So you might remember from the Thrasher logo we were talking about before. Really liked the cuts in there. And of course you can do that stuff yourself, but I'm trying to do this as quickly as possible, essentially. And maybe we'll customize it a little bit later, but we want to get close to the idea and then essentially get it approved before we're going down and like really finally spending hours crafting a font by
yes.
ourselves.
No, I think as creatives we've all accidentally fallen into the time sink of just if I just tweak that thing. Oh no, I'm holding a pen in my hand. If I just tweak that little thing or adjust it that little bit, and then you zoom out or you flip the canvas to see sort of if it's if the composition is working, and it's a mess, and you've sort of focused on this little thing. So it's very important to make sure you have a good overview of what you're doing, and to look sort of macro and micro to make sure that the concept is still as strong.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like something I learned a lot when I was sharing a studio with Christopher Doyle and co, and I realized that they're from the very beginning to when they present, and we've been a client on the other end of that before as well, it's not completely final when it's in the presentation. Like that is for the presentation. Then they'll go back and refine things, like refine everything, go back with like a fine tooth comb and make it. And that's when they do the pixel perfect stuff, which was a really big eye opener for me. And as you can see, the font has popped us in. So that's Howcom. So that's one of our fonts. Something I find really useful is just to go, let's just remind ourselves what our font is called. Because that's super useful. So we'll pop that there.
Yes. Name your layers, name your fonts.
Name your fonts.
It's a great tip.
It'll stop us kind of going back and forth and things like that. So let's jump down back here because I've forgotten the name of this one. FLEISH. There we are.
Fantastic. And I think what you were saying just before with Christopher Doyle and co, and what is presentation quality and what is final quality is something useful for any students or anyone new to design or branding tuning in, that it doesn't have to be sort of pixel perfect the first time round. And I think having an open and having a conversation with your client and making sure that their expectations match your expectations of the fidelity of what you're delivering each time is also really, really important to make sure that the project goes well and that everyone's happy.
Yeah, exactly. This one's pretty nice. So just looking for a good cross-section of fonts, that owl one that we were thinking about, which is an avenue that we're going to go down, we probably want something quite light and quite modern, potentially rounded. So I filtered this by rounded fonts, and that looks pretty cool. So activate. We'll just do both. It's free, or we're already paying for it. So whichever way you want to look at it. Let's get this one, and we'll throw this down, and then we'll move on.
And would you say 3 is? Yeah, it's super quick. Would you say that 3 is usually the number of fonts that you'll test for a project, for a design, or is this sort of in the time that we have for the stream, 3 is a good number?
I usually just like to, you don't really need 3 completely different font directions if like your direction is very, very clear. Like if the client had said this, we're a modern, contemporary, high fashion kind of thing, then you can bet that this middle one wouldn't be there. Like I would probably have 3 different variations or more, but 3 is always a magic number with this stuff. Just to play around with for now while we're in the exploratory phase. I just like to have them kind of handy. But yeah, any more than 3, I think you're probably overkilling it at that point. You really want to find what's working within the logo and everything like that, and then kind of come back and refine, because you'll have more information the further along you get.
Absolutely.
I reckon, anyway. So we've got a couple of fonts. I'm going to grab this little Talon. Oh, yeah, popped over there, and we're going to get started on one of these designs, I think. I think the skateboard one could be cool. So I'm going to grab this just as a reference, although I don't really need it, I don't think. You go. Oh, hold down shift, ladies and gentlemen. Pop that over there. And we're going to illustrate a skateboard first. So start with the rectangle and guess a skateboard shape. and bring these bad boys in. Now, does skateboards have like a flat bit at the top?
They have...
Or is it curve all the way?
I don't think it curves all the way. Well, because there's...
Let's find out.
Now we're going to Skateboard Anatomy with Joe and Flynn.
Yeah.
One end of the skateboard is a little bit more pointed than the other, and that's how you know which orientation it's supposed to be, I believe. But it is relatively rounded, but not quite.
That's pretty round, this one. I mean, I'm sure there's different designs. I think it is. Hey, something that's quite interesting, quite useful to know is if you go all the way, see how that red line pops up on a little scootboard there? That means that we can't bring it in anymore because it's relative. See, we can make it fatter. We can't actually bring it in anymore. So if that ever happens to you, just open it just a little bit and then you can bring it down until it closes. See that? Because the round corners are relative. Yeah. So what we probably want to do first, let's just use our skateboard as our... Bring that to the front, and we're literally just going to copy the shape of the skateboard. It doesn't really matter because we're going to trim it a little bit anyway. But if we can cheat, we should cheat. And then what do you think?
I hate that.
That looks pretty similar.
Pretty decent, yeah.
Cool. We'll keep Mr. Skateboard there for a little bit. Let's get a better color. Don't want to be dealing with just blacks today. And then we want to kind of trim this down. So if we look at this kind of thing, we basically want the top of the skateboard. And then we're going to play around with some orientations and stuff like that. The way that I would normally do that is literally just Pathfinder this. So get a shape over the top, hold down Shift, grab our Pathfinder down the bottom right here. I mean, it might be somewhere else, but if you can't find it, just go up to window, and find Pathfinder. You might notice that I jump into this all the time just to navigate stuff, just because there's so many menus.
It's very true.
And we want minus front based on what we've done, and then where we go. It's perfect.
Perfect.
It's perfect. There's other ways to do that, of course.
Yes.
So that's us there. And then we need to do some trucks. So this is kind of shot at a bit of a funny angle. Like, I'm not going to copy that. But it'll give us a decent reference, like where on the curve, where on the curve might the, trucks be. So we'll start with that. Just going to use our rectangle again. Relative kind of size. I wasn't intending on like using this as a reference, but hey, it's right there. So, and let's take that away. And we're going to go over here now.
I mean, I think this shows also how, yes, useful it is to have reference, because I definitely would have made the skateboard a lot flatter at the top.
Yeah.
And without having to go down to my garage to pick up my skateboard to look at it and see, it's great that we can have, or you can just pop in a reference photo and actually be able to accurately draw what you're trying to draw instead of relying too much on your imagination.
Yeah.
Which might not always be very accurate.
Imagination can fail you, especially for like trying to, like, because we could have kept that a little bit flat, and you might not notice, and most people might not notice, but then, someone somewhere will.
Yeah, the skateboarders,
like, why is that
they would
weird?
notice.
You can't kickflip on that. What the heck? So I'm thinking about drawing this shape. Actually, you know what I mean? I think we're going to use a pen tool.
I think what I've realized is the reason why I remembered the front or the back being flatter is because I've stacked it so many times on the skateboard that I've just eroded the wood at the end of it. So I think that's my fault. I'm too bad of a skateboarder to know the true shape of the skateboard. And I don't obviously have it on me now, but maybe for Thursday for part 2, I can travel down to the garage and pick up my skateboard and show on stream how well cared for it truly is.
Do a kickflip.
Yeah.
So we want that. We want to do something like this. So truck's kind of cool. Like they kind of come in a little bit like this.
And you're just using the pen tool to do all of this? Are you doing one side and then flipping it over, or trying to do it all in one go?
Yeah, I'm gonna do one side and flip it over, I think. So
Smart.
First thing we need to do is get rid of this. Don't want it to be filled yet. And go on.
A quick heads up on time. If my understanding of it is correct, I think we have about 20 minutes
Holy smokes.
Left to go. So time does go fast when we're having fun skating around.
It does.
So heads up on that. And of course, anyone, if you've just joined us or recently joined us, if you have any questions, we are here with Flynn Tracy, who's usually the host, but this time the guest. And we are designing out some concepts for a skateboarding brand for Talon for a Christmas present. And it's very exciting.
Merry Christmas, buddy. So this is a plate from the truck, so we're going to set that there. And this is pretty loose, so we'll probably need to clean this up. So again, like, don't want to go into like too much detail. We want to get the idea of the shape as right as possible without like overdoing everything. So we want to distribute everything. Vertical line like that. And then if you've got lots of stuff, you just want to make sure it's all centered. Just group anything that's symmetrical like that. So like our wheels as well, we'll just group that. And then it's good just to line all that up. There we go.
Oof, so satisfying. I love it when either you've noticed that something just looks a little bit off, and you just double checking, and then you align it, and it just all comes into place. It's one of the biggest adrenaline rushes of being a designer, is aligning your work. I feel like
it is a joy.
And hello as well to Redline and Louis, I believe, in the chat. Welcome.
Cool. So we're starting to look like a skateboard. And then we've got this one in here as well. So although that might actually work well with a black letter. Let's cheat.
Ooh, yeah, that's nice. And obviously, you might consider later down the line if you're going to have more color in the logo, but it's always great to start the design with the least amount of color possible, so you don't distract yourself or your eye with, oh, that's, a cool shape because it's in a cool color, but then it doesn't translate, for example, if you increase or decrease the size of the logo. So starting from the grayscale or black and white approach is always great, and then you can have fun with colors later.
Exactly. And look, the second you add color, like, it's really going to start popping, like it's really going to start looking a lot better. Like just adding a little bit of red with the gray there, playing around, where are we? Maybe we'll do something like this. Like it instantly starts looking a little bit more real. There are two reasons that I don't use color when I'm doing this. Everything you just said, it can be super distracting. And you can think something looks great when it actually doesn't. It's just, that was a really cool kind of color combination. And the other reason is I am super duper colorblind. So being colorblind really kind of does limit a lot, because what I think is good, other people say, why is the sky purple? So I have some limitations when it comes to color. But I have some solutions for that. It used to be a lot harder, actually. It used to be a lot harder back in the day to be colorblind. I actually didn't tell anybody I was colorblind that I knew in the graphic design world for about like 3 or 4 years until after I left. Because I thought I'd be kind of quite the fraud by doing that. And now I'm totally fine with it. But at the time I was like, man, if I tell them I'm just going to instantly fail every single color theory bit, right? Like a graphic design teacher isn't going to say, hey, you totally nailed the color, Flynn. They'd just be like, well, he obviously fluked that. And I didn't want to kind of expose myself to that kind of torture, so I didn't tell anybody. But these days, hey, you, get smaller. But these days, where are we? We're going to do a different version of this. So I'm sorry, just jumping back on this. Just want to try like
so good.
An outline version as well. So we're just trying to get like pump out like a couple of different versions. So we want this outline to be something like that, because when we do add color, what are you doing? Get over here.
Yeah, the color is really the sort of the cherry on top in this part of the design. So just like you did loads of sketches to figure out what concepts you felt were strong, doing iterations on the digital version in this case is also equally important to really test, a sort of stress test, like, is this the absolute ideal version of the design, or can it be adjusted or pushed even further?
Yeah, exactly. So we want round cap and round corners, and so most people are familiar with this stuff, but just in case you're not, that's without our round corners. Can't see the round cap because the shape is completely closed, but we'll just turn that on as default, because if we end up expanding from that path or something like that, we'll want that on. And then we're going to add a little bit to this one too. Just want to see what it looks like. Like that's kind of from here, like that's like pretty kind of like basic and stuff, but this is starting to get like Aaron Draplin kind of,
I was just thinking it. You read my mind. But I think it's great to know, like, okay, this is the level of detail that is seen in other design work, so you know that you're not going too detailed, and that it will still be recognizable as being a sort of a piece of good design, because it fits into the design ecosystem, so to speak.
Yeah. Definitely not saying I'm slinging pixels like Aaron Draplin, but but the aesthetic is kind of there, like kind of outside, the line work and then the color on the inside. And you can just imagine, like, we could just make like 10 different variations of colors on this, and it'll just start looking really modern and really crisp. And I love a good thick outline. So
yes, absolutely. And I have to also pass on a wonderful comment from YouTube. And if you're on YouTube, hop on over to Behance. That's where the live chat is happening, and where you can submit questions, thoughts and comments. But this was a lovely comment from AU Eorg. I'm so sorry if I butchered that name. I'm certain that I have, but saying that's wonderful. Entering design college usually has that colorblind test there, but that doesn't stop anyone from being a designer, actually. So speaking back to how things that we can perceive to be weaknesses or disadvantages just changes our approach to design. And I think
that's true.
Whether you're colorblind or your brain functions differently or anything like that. For example, with me and ADHD, it's all about finding out how can I just make work that I enjoy making, and trying not to be limited or discouraged by any perceived disadvantage,
and
perceived or real disadvantage, I should say.
And the main limitation is how is in your head. For that stuff. Like for me, it would have been totally fine. I probably would have been way better off if I told my teachers that I was colorblind, because they would have been like, oh, okay, well, A, that makes heaps of sense. But also B, like maybe we can help you in these other ways, like, using color swatches and things like that. Whereas I would often just kind of hide or just copy colors, because I might just go, okay, I'll just copy that kid's color. But I actually probably would have learnt more. And it's not like, not a big deal at all, of course. So I'm just setting up some guides and just kind of like locking this text in a little bit, adding the word skateboarding to it. Again, we're just using these system fonts. Well, not system fonts, we're using these Adobe fonts that we have, but there's nothing special about them. We'll probably play around with that and change them a little bit. But we've got some ideas of where we're going to go here. So I want to move on. I don't want to, I would normally do about, 10 different versions of this just to see what was working. And we can play around with different effects and things like that. But if we don't go down this road, it's wasted time. So let's move on. And I'm conscious we've only got 10 minutes left. So I'm really keen on this owl. Like,
it's a very good owl.
Yeah, it's a fine owl.
quite the hoot.
It is the hoot. All right, hootie boy. So I'm gonna.
If you look at the chat, I'm not sure if you saw rather, but I did do a hashtag hootie boys in the chat.
Nice.
So that's the kind of fun that we get up to in the chat, everyone. So
That's right.
pop on by, throw in questions, have a good time, and let's look at this owl being created.
Let's do it. So, I mean, I like to have the grid up a little bit. This is a little bit more of a geometric kind of approach, but it doesn't really matter. Like, just pop it anywhere. But because we're going to snap everything together anyway. But I really like this idea. So if you weren't here at the beginning, like this is just a basic sketch that was done. But I quite like. This probably has the most meaning of all of the. This is the one. This is your darling, right? So this is the one that you love, that you agonize over, and then you present to the client, and then they pick the other one with the star in the middle, and you go, this one has so much like thought put into it, and it actually makes a lot of sense. They're like, yeah, but I like the star. So whatever. We don't want to, we've got to make sure that we don't go too crazy. But this is the one that I have attached myself to.
Yes, this is the personal favorite.
Yeah.
Though it is dangerous to have personal favorites and darlings. I think that's a concept that Jeremy Lord, who is in the chat, I'm not sure if you're in the chat still.
He left when he saw I was using Illustrator. He's like, what?
I was like, what is this? I'm out. But the idea of, killing your darlings, which is not to necessarily get too attached to the work that you're doing, because if it isn't working, it isn't working, and you have to, give it another go and draw it again or sketch it out again, and that's totally fine. That's a part of the process. But of course, with clients, knowing that any concept that you present could become the final concept. So making sure that of everything that you present things that you're happy with or proud of, and also realizing that more often than not, or it's likely that the one that you're really passionate about is not going to get picked, and that's just the cruel reality on occasion of being a designer.
State of the world. So I just wanted to kind of mention that I'm using the arc tool for this. I just prefer using the arc tool because all the little dudes pop out. So I mean, there's lots of ways to do this. You can use the pen tool, but the arc tool would give you that kind of natural arc from the beginning, and I just find it's a much better place to start. So it's just hidden in here behind the line. So line tool, draw a straight line, simples. But yeah, this little arc bad boy is really good for this sort of thing. So just means when you grab the direct selection tool, or A, all the little dudes are here straight away, and see how they're perfect, like vertical and horizontal, and then you can muck around it from there. So tip.
That is a solid tip.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that existed. I'm gonna write that down as soon as the stream finishes, because that's gonna save me so much time. Because as anyone knows, using the pen tool is a skill in and of itself. So the more cheats, or the more tricks rather, I can utilize, the better. But you are right, we are slowly, unfortunately, running out of time. But I think we can knock this one out, and then maybe we can do a bit of an overview and chat about what we're gonna tackle on Thursday.
Yeah, we will do that. So basically, we're going to pick one of these, and we're going to apply a brand system to it. So I'm just copying that, holding down Option to make a copy of what I had, holding down Shift to keep it horizontally straight, and then I'm just going to right-click and then reflect it, and we want a vertical reflection. This line probably isn't perfect.
But it doesn't have to be yet.
But it doesn't have to be yet.
First concept.
But I will be like a little bit.
See, this is the other very, very enjoyable moment of being a designer, when the points on a shape or a line just align perfectly. It's like chef's kiss, isn't it?
I know, and when it doesn't.
When it doesn't, oh yeah, then you're in trouble.
Then you're in heaps of trouble. Whoops. So I held down Shift, but I didn't hold down Option when I was doing that. So it thought that I was just stealing my circle. This is super abstract, right? Like,
It's gorgeous.
but it is gorgeous, and there's a lot we could do with it as well. So I'm going to do the trick I did before. So because I want everything to be symmetrical, but I have two like things on different sides. So just group it first. We also need to group these two. I'm not going to join them yet because I'll probably play around with this a little bit later. Group that, then grab everything, and you can see these are all up here as well, like the horizontal line and things like that. But just in case and you're looking for it, it's always down here.
So satisfying.
So, and we've got this other one here, so I'm just going to expand on this a little bit. Let's get rid of our grid. And move this across. So, I mean, it's fine, but I think if we scale this down, it's going to look a little bit rubbish as a logo. So I think we need to make it a bit thicker. And I don't know about the circle to like eyebrow ratio we've got going on here. I don't know how, that's starting to look a little bit better. It's funny, there's only 3 elements, but the size of the circle, the size of the lines, the thickness of the lines, and the eyes and the distance away all play a part here. So there's a lot of playing around, but that's probably closer to what I had in my head, like the sketch. So we're going to grab this and this, which is still grouped. And again, same sort of thing. So there's something I kind of really like about this. It's not full-on skateboard, okay? I totally get that. Or maybe it's a broken skateboard from... We did have a broken skateboard
rough.
as one of our references, I think.
Yeah, James just said
right.
in the chat, if you minimize the beak area, it might look more like a skateboard.
I think that's a really good point, yeah. So it probably doesn't have to be like too pointy. Let's do what James said. I know we're running out of time.
Yeah, as you can see, and you'll probably see in the replay, I am looking at the time and then at the stream. But no, we're going all right. And usually we do cut these streams a little bit close. That is on brand for us. Pun intended there. We do have, I think, probably the last comment that we will be able to get to, I should say, is just to encourage us to make more sort of fun and branding streams. And to that I say, stay tuned and come back on Thursday, because there'll be part 2 of this stream. And if you look back on our YouTube channel, which I will also link in the chat, you can catch up on all previous streams that we've done here at Adobe Live APAC, and some of them are even about branding.
That's true.
So it's a win-win.
I think James makes a good point. Like, I think it does look a lot more like a skateboard. Probably looks less like an owl over here, but that's okay, because we could potentially add more features to the owl part of the logo. Because something we want to do is we want to kind of end up with these elements that we can apply to different things. So what's the smallest version of your logo look like? From a favicon on a website to like, what does your Instagram logo would look like for that brand is always good to think about. It'd probably be the owl head because it'd be a square. But, we're thinking about apparel, we're thinking about stickers. This could be something that's stitched into a shirt potentially.
Yes, embroidery.
Bit of embroidery for the skate bros, and and we can expand on the owl as well, like adding a lot of color. And if you think about like skate brands, like there are different takes on different decks and things like that. That you could always have another artist come through and then use the owl shape and then expand from it. And hey, I know we are out of time.
We are unfortunately out of time. So I'm going to do the all wrap up, but thank you everyone for joining us. Of course, stay tuned and come back around on Thursday, same time, same place, for part 2, where we'll be maybe finishing up a bit more on the concepts, but then going into the mock-up stage and sort of the finalization stage and talking about printing and everything like that. Flynn, thank you so much for joining us as a guest. I had a great time. I hope you had a great time, and we'll see you on Thursday. Everyone.
See you on Thursday. Thanks, Johanna. Bye.
Bye.